The bayou breathed fire. Midnight, Louisiana, 1821. A plantation house roared in flames, windows bursting like gunshots. The smell of burning sugar and charred flesh bled into the swamp air. From the shadows came a sound, low, steady, a man humming a lullaby. Screams cut short. Chains clattered. Silence swallowed the night. A single hand emerged from the smoke, fingers bloodied, clutching a crude talisman of bone and ribbon. The wind carried whispers that would haunt the South for decades. He didn't beg. He didn't run. The morning sun struck the cane fields like a hammer, burning off the mist and revealing endless rows of green. The stalks swayed under the lash, each crack echoing across the plantation like a gunshot. The air smelled of molasses and sweat, sweet and rotten at once. From the veranda of the overseer's house, a clerk scribbled in a leather ledger, his ink-stained fingers twitching with nervous precision. Samuel Briggs, thin, pale, and perpetually hunched as if every secret he wrote bent him further toward the earth. He muttered to himself as his quill scratched. 2 lashes for tardiness, 3 more for insolence. 1 runaway, returned. He dipped the pen again, sighing. God help me! Behind him, the overseer barked at the field hands. Samuel flinched at the sound but didn't look up. Down by the stables, a boy no older than 12 worked with trembling hands to brush a restless horse. His scarred cheek caught the light when he turned. Eli, the stable boy. His silence said more than words. The horse snorted, stamping its hooves, sensing the boy's unease. Easy now, Eli whispered. Easy, don't let him hear you, but the overseer did hear. He strode toward the stables, boots crunching gravel. His whip coiled at his side like a serpent. Boy, he barked, you finished with that horse yet? Eli stiffened. Almost, sir, almost. The man's shadow fell across him. Almost don't cut sugar. The whip cracked above Eli's head. The horse reared, Eli ducked, and Samuel's quill froze mid-sentence. He turned his head slightly, listening but not daring to intervene. The overseer grinned. Next time I don't miss. Eli swallowed his fear, nodded, and bent back to the horse. The whip slithered back to the overseer's belt, the threat left hanging like smoke. Across the fields, bells tolled from the chapel, a reminder of Sunday Mass, though no mercy came with its sound. The slaves bent lower, their murmurs hushed into the wind. Samuel closed his ledger, staring at the ink that stained his fingertips. For a moment, his lips moved in a whisper only he could hear. They'll come for us one day. But then he tucked the book beneath his arm, straightened his posture, and walked back toward the main house, as though words could erase the guilt in his bones. In the shadows of the stable, Eli hummed under his breath, a broken lullaby he had heard from the older field hands. Soft, fragile, almost lost beneath the hiss of the cane fires in the distance. The plantation breathed like a living beast. Chains rattling, sugar boiling, the crack of the overseer's whip the heartbeat that kept it alive. And for now, no one dared to break its rhythm. The story of vengeance began long before the fire. In the quarters, a boy with solemn eyes sat beside his sister as their mother sang softly to them. The song was older than the cane fields, older than Louisiana itself, carried across oceans in whispers and pain. Malik Jean-Baptiste. Even as a child, he never cried loudly. He hummed instead, echoing the lullaby his mother gave him. It clung to him like a second skin. Beside him, Marie-Louise Jean-Baptiste tied a red ribbon in her hair. It was frayed but precious. Her father had smuggled it from market, a token of love. When she laughed, the ribbon flashed bright against the dark. That laugh ended the night their father was tied to the post. The overseer's whip fell like thunder, and Malik held Marie's hand so tightly his nails cut her skin. Their father sang as the lashes split him open, voice trembling but proud. When he fell silent, Malik carried that silence like an heirloom. Marie folded the ribbon into her dress, stained with a drop of their father's blood. The children grew in the shadow of that memory. On the other side of the estate, another boy was learning lessons of a different kind, Lucien Dufour, the heir to the plantation, pale as porcelain with a silver crucifix always hanging at his neck. His mother kept him indoors, away from the heat, away from the labor. His tutors drilled Latin into his ears and discipline into his spine. Mercy breeds weakness, the tutor told him, rapping the desk with a cane, and weakness breeds revolt. Lucien repeated the words like scripture, but sometimes in the quiet of night, he pressed the crucifix against his lips and wondered what mercy might feel like. One afternoon, By the stables, Malik and Lucien crossed paths. Children then, yet already marked by the roles they would play. Lucien looked at Malik's scarred hands and smirked. "Those are Chain's hands." Malik stared back unflinching. "One day they'll be free hands." Lucien laughed, though unease flickered in his pale eyes. "Chains don't break." Marie stepped between them, ribbon bright, gaze fierce. "Then maybe they burn." The words hung in the summer air like a prophecy neither boy understood, but both would remember. Years passed. Malik grew strong, his body hardened by labor, his mind sharpened by silence. Marie remained defiant, the ribbon now hidden more often than shown, a secret ember of rebellion. And Lucien, heir to land and chains alike, carried his crucifix and the cold lessons of power, never questioning the cracks beneath his feet. The cane still grew, the whip still cracked, and the lullaby still drifted through the nights. But beneath the song, something darker stirred, something waiting. The years thickened like the cane fields, row upon row, each season pressing heavier than the last. The children of memory became figures of destiny. Malik Jean-Baptiste no longer looked like a boy. His shoulders carried the weight of barrels and chains, yet his eyes carried something deeper, a quiet flame that would not die. At night, when others slept, he stole into the swamps, guided by whispers of drums that echoed faint in the distance. There, under the cypress trees, he found her, Mother Adeline, a conjure woman, her hair a silver river down her back, her eyes clouded by age but sharp as glass when they fixed on him. Her hands smelled always of herbs and smoke. She lived on the edge of the plantation, tolerated but feared. Children called her a witch. Overseers called her trouble. Malik called her teacher. "You have silence in your chest," she told him one night, grinding leaves into a paste that glowed faintly under the moonlight. "But silence can rot a man. Better to turn it into a song. Or a blade." Malik frowned. "I don't want songs. I want justice," Adeline smiled, toothless and knowing. "Then you'll need both." She taught him herbs that could heal and others that could kill, symbols to draw in the dirt with ash and blood, rituals whispered in languages forbidden but never forgotten. Malik listened, and remembered. Meanwhile, Marie grew into a woman whose beauty unsettled men far older than her. Her laughter had quieted since their father's death, but the red ribbon still found its way to her hair on certain days like a secret challenge. That ribbon caught the eye of Thomas Calhoun, the overseer. Whiskey clung to his breath like a second skin. His boot struck hard against earth as though he wanted each step to be remembered. His smile was the worst of him, wide, yellow, dripping with mockery. One night, as Marie filled a bucket at the well, Thomas approached, leaning on the post as though the night belonged to him. "You wear that ribbon like a flag," he said. "Do you know what flags are good for, girl?" Marie's grip on the bucket tightened. "For flying," Thomas chuckled, leaning closer. "For claiming." The bucket slipped, water splashing over the dirt between them. Her eyes, sharp as her brother's, burned into his, but he only smiled as if her defiance tasted sweet. Malik heard of it the next morning. His jaw clenched. "He touched you?" Marie shook her head. "Not yet. Not ever," Malik swore, but his voice carried the weight of a man who knew promises could be broken. Lucien Dufour, meanwhile, played a different game. Grown now into the heir his father hoped for, he wore silk coats and polished boots, silver crucifix glinting against his chest. But beneath the sheen of inheritance he chased a forbidden fire, Isabelle Fournier. Daughter of a Creole aristocrat, pale and delicate as porcelain, her hands always smelling faintly of lavender from the garden she tended. She played piano at gatherings, her notes spilling like water into the heavy Louisiana air. Lucien lingered at the edges of her music, staring too long, speaking too carefully. One night, as she closed the lid of the piano, he dared a whisper. "Do you believe in mercy, Isabelle?" She tilted her head, curious. "Mercy, why ask me?" "Because no one here seems to." Her laugh was soft, nervous. "Then perhaps you should learn it yourself." But mercy was not what Lucien was being taught. At supper, his father reminded him, "The land is yours. The hands that work it are yours. Never forget." And Lucien nodded, crucifix heavy against his chest. Isabelle's laugh tangled in his thoughts. Between Malik's whispered lessons in the swamp, Marie's growing shadow under Thomas's gaze, and Lucien's hunger for a love he could not claim, the threads twisted tighter, the cane still grew. The bells still tolled, The lullaby still drifted across the night, but mercy was fading and something darker waited in its place. The summer night was heavy, the air thick with the smell of cane fires. The workers slept where they could, bodies curled in corners, dreams bound in chains, but not everyone slept. Marie-Louise Jean-Baptiste carried a lantern to the barn, her ribbon tied loosely in her hair. She had been sent to fetch grain. Her footsteps echoed against the wood, soft, cautious. From the shadows, a voice slurred with drink. Well now, the ribbon shines even in the dark. Thomas Calhoun stepped forward, bottle in one hand, whip in the other. His grin glistened in the lantern light. Marie froze. I only came for grain. Grain won't keep you warm, Thomas whispered, setting the bottle aside. But I will. She turned to leave, but his hand shot out, seizing her arm. The lantern swung, light scattering across hay and dust. Let me go, she hissed. He leaned close, his breath sour with whiskey. You're mine, ribbon and all. The barn door creaked. Malik appeared, shoulders tense, fists clenched. Take your hands off her, he said, voice low, almost shaking with the force of his control. Thomas laughed. The brother comes. Brave but foolish. He shoved Marie aside and faced Malik, whip uncoiling like a serpent. You'll learn your place. The whip cracked. Malik dodged, lunging forward, grabbing Thomas's wrist. The two struggled, boots scraping over dirt, lantern light flickering wildly. For a moment, Malik's strength pushed the overseer back, but Thomas was older, heavier and drunk with cruelty. He headbutted Malik hard, sending him sprawling into the hay. Marie cried out. Stop! Thomas raised the whip again, striking Malik's back. The sound split the barn, raw and sharp. Malik bit down a scream, eyes blazing. Outside the barn, footsteps paused. Lucien Dufour stood in the shadows, silver crucifix glinting at his throat. He had come, perhaps drawn by curiosity, perhaps by conscience. He saw everything. Marie trembling, Malik beaten, Thomas's cruelty bare. Marie's eyes locked on him. Help us! Lucien froze. His lips parted, but no words came. His fingers clutched the crucifix tighter. He stepped back into the darkness. Inside, Thomas slammed Malik to the ground, chaining his wrists with iron kept ready by the wall. You think you're a man? He sneered. You'll die a dog. Marie sobbed, falling beside her brother, clutching his bloodied hand. Malik whispered through clenched teeth, voice breaking but steady. They can chain my hands, not my will. Thomas leaned close, breath hot against his ear. We'll see. He dragged Marie away, shoving her outside, leaving Malik bound in the dark. The barn door slammed shut, bolts sliding into place. In the silence that followed, Malik breathed raggedly, chains rattling with each movement. He hummed, broken, faint, the old lullaby. The sound drifted into the night, where Lucien stood hidden among the shadows, crucifix pressed hard into his chest. He whispered to himself, mercy breeds weakness. Then he turned away. The barn stayed dark. The lullaby stayed low, and something inside Malik began to burn. Days passed in silence, but silence was not peace. The lash marks on Malik's back scabbed over, then split again with labor. Each strike, each insult, each stolen night hardened him. He stopped speaking except to his sister. Marie found him in the cane fields one dusk, her ribbon hidden beneath a plain cloth. She whispered as the overseer's back turned, They won't stop, not until we stop them. Malik's lips trembled, but he answered, Then we wait, and we plan. At night, chained to the barn post, Malik listened. The guard spoke loosely when drunk. Their jokes revealed schedules, weaknesses, where the keys hung, how many bullets each carried. Malik remembered it all. One night, while the rain hammered the roof, he whispered to the old man Elias, who lay beside him, You've seen uprisings before? Elias coughed, shaking his head. They fail, always. Blood, then silence. That's the pattern. Malik's eyes shone in the dark. Then let's write a different pattern. Elias studied him, the boy with scars that had not broken him. For the first time, he didn't laugh. The planning began in whispers. Who would signal with song? Who would gather stones? Who knew where the powder was kept? Each voice trembled, but each voice joined. By day, Malik showed no change. He bent under the cane loads, eyes downcast, body bruised. By night, he rehearsed. He used the rattle of his chains to mask coded beats, teaching rhythms that only the enslaved could hear. A signal, a promise. One evening, Lucien Dufour walked the perimeter, his crucifix glinting in moonlight. He paused by the barn, hearing faint tapping, faint humming. Something like a message, something not meant for him. He clenched his jaw. Temptation is the devil's mask, he muttered, and walked on. The first test came when Thomas stumbled drunk again into the barn. Malik feigned weakness, body slack, head bowed. When Thomas reached to kick him awake, Malik lunged, grabbing his boot with both chained hands. Thomas toppled, cursing. Malik could have snapped his neck. He didn't, not yet, he whispered instead, so low Thomas couldn't be sure he heard right. Your time is numbered. Thomas shoved him back, unsettled. For the first time, Malik saw fear in the overseer's eyes. Later, Marie whispered, "Why didn't you finish him?" Malik's gaze burned steady. Not yet. The fire must spread, not flicker. Suspicion grew. Guards began watching closer, counting rations, tightening chains. Twice Malik was nearly caught whispering in the shadows. Once, he swallowed a scrap of paper with names before a torch swept past. Another time, he pretended to hum a lullaby when the rhythm was really a code. But the seed had taken root. Eyes met in silence. Chains clinked in unison. The enslaved no longer walked alone. They walked with one heartbeat, one plan. Malik's words lingered in their ears. They can chain our bodies, not our fire. The swamp grew heavy with rumor. Every evening, the cicadas' song mixed with hushed voices in the fields. Something was coming, and the air seemed to know it. Malik had become a shadow, slipping through corners, speaking only when words carried weight. To the others, he was no longer just a boy with scars. He was a flame waiting to ignite. Marie leaned close one night as they sorted cane stalks. They're restless, too restless. If anyone speaks out of turn, they won't, Malik interrupted. His eyes stayed on the ground, but his tone was steel. They know the cost, yet trust was fragile. Elias, weary and trembling, pulled Malik aside. You're asking them to risk children, mothers, the old. They'll follow, but if it fails, it won't fail, Malik cut him short. Then his voice softened. This land already eats us. Better to die striking back than kneeling. Elias looked away, ashamed. He didn't answer, but his silence was consent. The first true test came with Isaac, the young boy who had once been Malik's shadow. Isaac whispered too loudly, giddy with the promise of freedom. His words carried to Thomas, who turned sharp as a whip. What did you say, boy? Isaac stammered, sweat dripping down his temples. Malik stepped forward before the boy broke. He was repeating a hymn, sir. Something the old women sing. Thomas narrowed his eyes. He stared at Isaac, then at Malik. His lip curled. You're lying. He raised his whip, only to lower it, a slow smirk spreading instead. Not tonight, but I'll be watching you. When Thomas left, Isaac shook with fear. Malik gripped his shoulder hard. Your tongue will kill us if you don't chain it. Tears welled in the boy's eyes. I just wanted to believe it was real. Malik's voice broke, softer now. It will be, but only if you're silent until the hour comes. Suspicion deepened. Lucien Dufour began prowling the halls at night, rosary clutched, murmuring prayers as though he could smell rebellion. His sermons grew harsher. Obedience is salvation. Rebellion is damnation. Behind him, Marie whispered bitterly to Malik, he preaches chains with the same tongue that blesses bread. The night before harvest, Elias brought Malik a rusted nail sharpened to a point. He pressed it into the young man's palm. You'll need it more than me. Malik stared at the nail, a simple thing. But in his hand, it felt like destiny. 2 near misses followed. One night, a guard nearly caught Marie hiding food scraps for the conspirators. Another night, Lucien spotted Elias slipping away and demanded where he was headed. Elias improvised, coughing, claiming he was relieving himself in the swamp. Lucien stared long, suspicious, before walking away. Each brush with discovery tightened the knot in Malik's chest. But each close call also steeled his resolve. When the moon rose red, swollen like a wound in the sky, Malik gathered them all in whispers. Tomorrow, chains break. Tomorrow, fire sings. They bowed their heads. The lullaby began again, soft, dangerous, like thunder before a storm. The air was too still that night. No crickets, no wind, just silence thick as wet cloth. Malik stood barefoot in the dirt outside the quarters. His chest rose and fell slow, controlled. In his hand, the rusted nail Elias had given him glimmered faintly under the moon. He whispered a line his mother used to sing, "Sleep, my child. The fire will guard you." Marie appeared beside him, carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it with trembling fingers. Inside, 3 shards of broken glass scavenged over weeks. "Weapons," she said, though her tone wavered. "There'll be enough," Malik answered. His voice sounded foreign, deep, like something speaking through him. Around them, shadows moved. Elias, shoulders hunched, eyes darting. Isaac, pale but determined, clutching a length of chain he had pried loose. Old Mambo Claudine, lips moving in a low chant, scattering powder into the dirt. At the center of the group, Malik raised his hand. "No turning back. Tonight we end what they began." The others nodded. The silence cracked, filled by the sound of hearts beating in sync. The big house loomed, its whitewashed walls glowing ghost-like. Lanterns flickered in the windows and laughter spilled faintly from within. Masters dining late, feasting while the fields lay broken. Malik's eyes narrowed. Now, they moved like smoke. Marie slipped to the kitchen door, soft as a cat. Elias followed close, carrying a wooden club. Isaac lingered, trembling, but Malik pulled him forward. Inside, the smell of roasted meat and spilled wine hit them. Lucien Dufour's voice carried from the dining room, pompous and sharp. "To discipline is to love. To punish is to save." Marie's face twisted with hatred. She raised a shard of glass, whispering, "For every back you broke." They burst into the dining hall. The scene exploded. Lucien froze mid-sentence, goblet in hand. Thomas Calhoun reached for his whip. Madame Dufour gasped, pearls clattering from her neck. Malik's voice cut the air. "No more chains." He drove the rusted nail deep into the table before Lucien. The sound rang like thunder. Chaos erupted. Marie slashed at Thomas, catching his cheek. He howled, stumbling back, blood dripping down his jaw. Elias swung his club into a guard's skull with a crack. Lucien rose, trembling, but his voice did not falter. "Blasphemy! You damn your souls!" Malik seized him by the collar. "My soul's already buried in your fields." The room became fire and shadow. Wine spilled like blood across the floor. Isaac swung his chain clumsily, striking Madame's arm. She shrieked, collapsing to the ground. Thomas regained his footing, whip cracking loud enough to split the air. It coiled around Marie's wrist, tearing skin. She screamed, dropping her shard. Thomas sneered. "You think you can burn me?" Malik lunged, tearing the whip free, and in that moment he pressed the rusted nail to Thomas's throat. "You taught me pain," he hissed. "Now you learn it too." But before the strike could land, Lucien cried out, clutching a crucifix. "God will smite you, boy." "Then let him watch," Malik spat and drove the nail forward. Blood sprayed across the tablecloth. The house roared alive. Servants screamed, guards charged in with pistols. Smoke curled from the kitchen. Claudine had set fire to the stores, her chant growing louder as flames caught. Marie, clutching her bleeding wrist, stumbled but rose again, stabbing another guard with a jagged shard. Elias fought with desperate rage, his club breaking bone after bone. Isaac froze at the sight of so much blood, trembling, nearly dropping his chain. "Move!" Malik shouted at him. "Or die where you stand." Isaac, teeth clenched, swung again, this time catching a guard's knee. The man fell screaming. The fire spread fast, licking the walls, devouring curtains. The dining hall filled with choking smoke. Lucien collapsed, blood pouring from his chest. His hand scrabbled for the crucifix, pressing it to his lips even as his eyes dimmed. His last whisper was not a prayer but a curse. "This house will haunt you." Madame Dufour crawled across the floor, shrieking, clawing at Marie's skirt. "Mercy! For the love of God, mercy!" Marie's face hardened. She bent low, whispering into the woman's ear. "Did you give mercy when they begged you?" Then she pressed her shard into Madame's throat. Outside, the quarters had erupted. Word had spread. Men and women poured forth with tools, knives, bare fists, screams and battle cries mixing with the crackle of flames. The plantation became a battlefield. Malik stumbled out of the house, blood splattered across his chest. He looked at the sky, red, glowing, alive with sparks. Thomas Calhoun stumbled after him, face cut, whip in hand. He charged, roaring. Malik turned slow, eyes burning. Their fight was brief, brutal. Whip against nail, lash against fist. Finally, Malik drove Thomas into the dirt, pinning him. Thomas gasped, choking. "You'll hang for this." Malik pressed the nail harder. His words came like a growl. "Better hanging than kneeling." With one swift motion, he ended it. By dawn, the plantation was ash and ruin. Bodies lay scattered. Survivors stood in shock, smoke clinging to their skin. The lullaby rose once more, this time from dozens of voices. a hymn of grief and fury. Malik, standing tall amidst the ruin, felt the weight of every eye. For a moment he almost believed freedom was possible, but in the distance dogs barked. Hooves thundered. The world beyond the swamp was already coming. The fire sang louder, as if mocking the fragile silence. The flames still smoked when the hounds came. By mid-morning, riders thundered through the cane fields, militiamen, neighbors, planters from miles around. Their faces were pale with fear, rifles gleaming under the sun. The uprising was no secret now. It had roared across the land like thunder. Malik stood at the edge of the ruins, breath ragged, body trembling from exhaustion. For one heartbeat he thought of running, but his legs would not move. Beside him, Marie clutched her torn wrist, whispering through cracked lips, "They're here." Elias, bloodied and bruised, shook his head. "We don't run. We finish." The militia swept in like a storm. Shouts, gunshots, dogs snapping. The survivors scattered into the swamp, but many fell in the first volley. Marie dragged Isaac into the reeds, whispering, "Don't look back." The boy sobbed, too shaken to obey, his eyes locked on the bodies left behind. Malik raised the rusted nail like a blade. He fought until hands dragged him down, knees pressing into his spine, rifles cracking over his head. They bound his wrists in iron, chains biting deep into the scars already there. The silence after the clash was worse than the noise. Smoke curled from the ruins. Bodies smoldered, and from the shadows, whispers began to stir. The trials came swiftly, held in the grand hall of another plantation. Planters and judges sat in polished chairs, their wigs powdered, their voices dripping venom. The accused were dragged forward one by one, shackled, stripped of dignity. Lucien Dufour's corpse was laid out for display, a crucifix clutched in his stiffening hands. Madame's body, pale and bloodied, was paraded like a martyr. The overseer Thomas's death was described in lurid detail, his name spoken with righteous fury. The court's verdict was already written before the trials began. Still, the performances mattered. Society demanded spectacle. "Marie Baptiste," the judge intoned, "you led others to slaughter with your witchcraft and deceit." Marie raised her chin, her torn wrist still raw. Her voice did not waver. "I led them to hope. You led them to chains," gasps rippled through the crowd. A planter spat, "She mocks God." The judge slammed his gavel. "Guilty. Death by fire." Marie smiled faintly, whispering so only Malik could hear. "Better flames than chains," Elias was called next. He could barely stand, his ribs broken, his eyes sunken with grief. They accused him of plotting, of striking masters, of treason. "I did what any man would do," he rasped. "I stood against the whip," the judge sneered. "And for that you will hang." Elias bowed his head. "Then I will hang proud." Malik was saved for last. The courtroom grew hushed as he was dragged forward, chains rattling across the floor. The judges whispered among themselves. Here was the one they feared most, the name already spreading like fire through the bayou. The boy who sang lullabies in the smoke. The judge leaned forward. "Malik, you butchered God's anointed, raised hand against your betters, burned his house." Malik stared at him, blood dried on his face. "Better than letting his anointed choke us in fields." The judge's face reddened. "You damn yourself with your own tongue?" The gavel cracked. "Death by hanging." A murmur swept the court, part relief, part dread. But Malik smiled, lips curling into something defiant. "Hang me then. My song will not die." The executions came in waves. Marie was tied to a stake in the square. They lit the pyre beneath her. She did not scream. Instead, she began to hum, the lullaby soft and haunting. Even as the flames rose, she kept singing. The crowd shifted uneasily, some crossing themselves, others whispering that her song would curse them all. Elias was marched to the gallows with 3 others. His body shook, but his voice rang strong. Better to swing free than bow in chains. The trapdoor snapped, his body fell, and silence fell heavier than any sermon. Malik was last. They dragged him to the hanging tree at dawn, the crowd swollen with onlookers. Some cheered, others prayed. Children clung to their mothers' skirts, wide-eyed. The rope was slung around his neck. The judge stood before him. "Any last words?" Malik's voice was steady. "Remember us when your fields burn again. Remember us when your sons hear our lullabies in their sleep." The lever dropped. The rope snapped tight. His body jerked once, then hung still. But in the hush that followed, someone, no one knew who, began humming. The same lullaby carried on the breeze. Others picked it up, low and trembling. Soon even those who hated him swore they heard it in their dreams. In the weeks after, the land lay uneasy. The Dufour plantation was ash, its ruins black against the swamp sky. Neighbors whispered of shadows moving through the cane fields, of voices humming in the night. Some claimed to see Malik's figure by the firelight, his eyes burning, his talisman in hand. Planters doubled their patrols. Laws grew harsher, chains heavier. But the fear lingered. Among the enslaved, stories spread like gospel. Marie, the witch who sang as she burned. Elias, the man who stood tall on the gallows. Malik, the boy who defied death with a lullaby. The rebellion was crushed, yet its echo had only begun. They buried Malik in an unmarked pit outside the parish walls. No stone, no prayer, no name. The earth was meant to swallow him, silence him, but the earth does not always obey. By winter, whispers spread through the bayous. Children swore they heard a humming in the reeds soft as a cradle song, turning sharp in the wind. Cane workers claimed they saw his figure at dusk, standing at the edge of the fields with chains dangling from his wrists. Some said the dogs howled at night because they smelled his blood in the swamp. Others said fireflies clustered in strange shapes, letters, words that spelled his name. Marie became a legend in her own right. Mothers frightened their children with her story. If you misbehave, the witch who sang in the flames will take you. Yet at the same time, her name was whispered in prayer when women went into labor or when someone faced the whip. Her lullaby became a hidden hymn, hummed under breath as slaves bent over the cane. Elias's name was less sung, but he lived in silence, a figure in the shadows of memory. He stood tall when the rope fell, they whispered. He died like a man, not a slave. His quiet courage was remembered not in song, but in the stiffened backs of men who endured lashes without breaking. The planters tried to stamp out the stories. They passed harsher laws forbidding meetings, punishing even the whisper of song. Lucien Dufour's name was carved into marble as a martyr, a servant of God struck down by savages. His widow moved north, repeating the tale at salons, her version polished with tears and Bible verses. To her audience, Malik became a demon, Marie a witch, Elias a brute. But truth has a way of bending. What was told in courts by day was undone at night by whispers around fires. Travelers carried the story upriver, adding flourishes with every retelling. In some versions, Malik vanished into the swamp and was never caught. In others, the fire refused to burn Marie until she chose to walk into it herself. Some swore Elias's body swung for 3 days without rotting, because the gallows feared him. By the 1830s, the tale had spread as far as New Orleans. Musicians folded fragments into their songs. A line about fire, a line about chains, a line about a lullaby that turned to thunder. White preachers warned their flocks that the devil of the cane fields still walked. Black preachers invoked his name in secret, as a symbol that even chains could break. And in the hush between sermons, in the quiet before sleep, people asked themselves a forbidden question. What if he was right? Even the militia, hardened men, admitted things they would not say aloud. One recalled how, as Malik's body swung, he could swear the boy's lips were still moving. Another claimed that after the executions, the fields grew poor, the cane bitter, as if the soil itself refused to serve. Over time, Malik ceased to be a man. He became a presence, half memory, half curse. Children sang his lullaby in games, then hushed each other, afraid it might summon him. Old women swore his spirit guarded the weak, and every time fire lit the cane fields, someone whispered, "He walks again." History wrote him down as a criminal, a murderer, a savage. Folklore made him a protector, an avenger, a ghost who could not be chained. And in Louisiana, 1821 was remembered less as the year of a failed rebellion, and more as the year the swamp itself rose to speak. The line that lived on longest was not the court sentence, nor the preacher's sermon. It was the whisper passed mouth to mouth, generation to generation. He didn't beg. He didn't run. History, they say, is written by the victors. Yet in Louisiana, 1821, the victors could not silence the song. The records are clear enough. A failed rebellion, 3 executions, and a warning to others. In the margins of the official ledgers, Malik is reduced to ink, slave, murderer, hanged. But between the lines lives something more dangerous than fact: memory. What endures is not the judge's sentence nor the preacher's sermon, but the whispers of the fields. Memory bends truth, reshapes it, burns it into story. Story becomes something the law cannot kill. Was Malik a butcher or a hero? Was Marie a witch or a healer? Was Elias a rebel or simply a man who refused to kneel? Each answer depends on who tells the tale and why. What we know is this: injustice breeds fire. Chains rattle long after they are broken, and when people are stripped of voice, their silence becomes thunder. Perhaps the real curse of Louisiana was not in bones or charms, but in the refusal to forget. Every generation retold the story, shaping it anew, reminding the living that rebellion is always a possibility, even in the darkest night. And so Malik did not beg. He did not run. He left behind a silence more powerful than sermons, a lullaby that still hums through the cane fields when the wind rises. History buried him, legend resurrected him, and somewhere between those two graves lies the truth. The story of Malik is not just a tale of blood and chains. It is the echo of every voice silenced, every dream crushed, and every act of defiance that history tried to erase. Tonight, you walked through shadows, through betrayal, through fire, through a gallows where a young man met his end. But Malik's silence was not defeat. It was a vow passed down, a reminder that resistance is carved into the bones of the oppressed. Legends like his are not comfortable. They are not meant to be. They unsettle, they haunt, they demand we remember the cost of forgetting. If this story has stirred something in you, if you felt the weight of Malik's chains, or heard the whispers of rebellion in the cane fields, then do not let it fade when the screen goes dark, because this is not the end. It is only one chapter in a much larger history. This is the slave resistance, where every forgotten cry becomes a voice again, where the past is not buried, it rises. Stay with us. The next story waits in the shadows,